So just very briefly, for those of you who are new to Weston, Weston is the oldest theater in Vermont. It's also, I like to say, one of the newest theaters in Vermont. We just opened a new building about 2 years ago. That new building was built in large part to be a home for new work. And so this past year, when we were forced to cancel our in-person summer season, we focused our efforts on building our new works program. And that is the generation, that's where One Room really came from. Many of the artists who you're going to see tonight have been with Weston, and some of the artists who are here tonight now in this conversation have been with us before, including Bichette Chum, Reginald Douglas, and Mike Donahue. So this was really, our thinking was, in this moment when the world is changing so rapidly, and when things are keeping us apart and unable to gather together, we wanted to go to our artists, and particularly to our playwrights, and ask them to respond to and reflect on the moment that we're in. So that was the generation of One Room. We commissioned 14 playwrights to crack open this time of isolation. We asked them to consider what makes a home and what stories might happen in its ordinary rooms. And we let them take that question to wherever it might lead. All of the filming was done under stay-at-home conditions, so actors were their own cameramen, their own DP, their own gaffer, really their own everything. Directors rehearsed with actors and playwrights using Zoom and other technology. So it's really theater created in this moment and by this moment. So briefly, I'm going to introduce our artists tonight, but do know in your email you have as well a link to our playbill, our virtual playbill, which tells you everything about these wonderful artists. So with us from front and back are playwright Bichette Chum and actor Susan Park. So Bichette, yeah, can you wave? And Susan, thank you.
Hello, Weston.
With us from the piece called Rita are playwright Josh Wilder, director Reg Douglas, and actor Jakeem Powell. And with us from the Visitations by Jen Silverman are director Mike Donahue and actor Dana Delany. So welcome to all of you. So I'm going to start sort of where I just left off, which is that these pieces were made under really difficult circumstances. You were all at home and working together remotely. So I'm curious to hear what made you say yes to this? What made you decide to jump in and participate in this project at this time?
There was nothing else going on. And I had worked with Jen and Mike before on a play at MCC, Collective Rage, and actually we've been trying to do another play together, and then this kind of cut things short. So why not? Why not? And also I'd like to give a little shout out to Weston Playhouse, because in the 1960s, I went there when I was a child. So I know it well.
I love that. I love that. And that is one of the great things about Weston. It's this little corner of the world, but a lot of people have all these connections to it. And Dana, we can't wait to get you back here. Does anybody else have any thoughts about what made you want to say yes right now?
Yeah, I'll just also share, you know, when Jen and I were first talking about it, I think so many of the responses from theaters initially were to like, what plays do we have in our history that we can do a reading of? Who wants to tune into a Zoom reading? And like, no shade against any of that, but I think the idea of doing a Zoom reading for us felt a little deadly, and that the ask for this was to create something that was specifically for like a Zoom, Skype, FaceTime format, and that it was sort of embracing the way that we're all able to communicate right now. I think that felt super interesting to us, rather than trying to like reformat something that is actually supposed to be a live event for this medium.
Yeah. And so that gets to another question I have, which is, some of you have worked in film and television, but you're all also or primarily theater artists. And I'd love to hear you talk about what it means to you to be a theater artist working and creating in the world today at a moment when, as Mike said, basically almost every theater is closed down in some way or another. What is it, what makes you able to work and what makes it hard to work, and what is it like to be a theater artist working on a project like this?
I think it's kind of cool because we're in this moment right now where the playing field is leveled. Everybody's on Zoom, everyone's on the computer. And if you have a computer, then you're in the game. Yeah. And I think that as artists, we don't have time to sit back and wallow about death. We do it without COVID, so I think now is the time to create. And I think that for some artists, survival mode isn't new. It's the norm. It's what we do, period. For those who have never been on survival mode, okay, cool. Go through what you have to go through. But right now we are at a very important time as theater artists where we have to actually lead, and we actually have to be the hammer that shapes history. And it's a really important time and a really exciting time and optimistic time.
Thanks, Josh. That's really great. Vichette, can I pull you in? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I have had a hard time creating in this moment. I've found it really difficult because the question of why is resounding. It's so resonant in my ears. Like, why theater? Why now? When the very nature of what we do is getting in rooms and sharing stories with one another, and we can't actually do that. And so, I think in many ways, we are asked to be thoughtful. We're asked to really take a step back and in a lot of ways to really ask why, I feel like before COVID, we were running at 1,000 miles per hour in a very capitalistic society. And, we were trying to fit, what is that proverb of the peg in the space, the square peg and the whatever. I mean, I feel like in many ways, theater has been doing that for a long time. And there are certain practices that were sort of not sustainable. And so I think we're being asked to take a step back and really strengthen our why. And yeah, I mean, it's been challenging, but this project has been really exciting because I think the ask is really transparent. It's like, you're in your apartment, you're hanging out, take a look, And so for me, it was really exciting because my piece is very much, I folded in a lot of my mother into the piece and her superstitions about spaces. And for me, it was exciting to sort of if I can't see my mom, I'm going to bring her into the story.
So I'm going to, Susan, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, just to start sort of pulling off of what Vichette was just saying, both about his mom, but also the kind of working in this moment. What was it like to bring what is essentially a new piece, a new play, to life with a writer and a director when you had to do that in a remote fashion? How did you manage that? And of course, I want to ask that of Jakeem as well and Dana. But since we just heard about Vichette's mom, Susan, can I put you on the spot with that?
For sure. I found it really inspiring, actually, to be able to not stop the flow of, even though we're in this position where we can't go out and we can't gather in spaces, to find new avenues to still be able to express ourselves. And as artists, there is no stopping the flow of, if you want to create something and express something, then you kind of have to flow with it and then find a way. And to be able to do that has been really nice. Yeah, it's different, and the challenges are not to have that person-to-person chemistry, that thing that is palpable and you just don't know until you're in that space. But also in other ways, it felt really intimate. because you block everything else out and you're just there to communicate and share this thing. And you've carved out this space to solely for this. And yeah, in a new medium.
Yeah.
I think it's really exciting for me because I feel like we spend a lot of time on screens anyway, you know, and one of the words that I really picked up on that you said, Suzanne, was communicate. And I feel like a lot of times we spend all of our energy and attention on screens and we're not really communicating with people. So this was a beautiful opportunity to take the time to figure out how can we relay a message to people with intention and specificity.
Mm.
Yeah. I found, I actually have questions of the other actors because I find it challenging, and I do a lot of on-camera stuff, but this is not the same at all. And it's this weird hybrid between theater and film. And especially if you're doing a monologue, you know, I live by myself. I have to learn 4 pages by myself, you know, and then you're talking to somebody on the screen, which is what ours was. I'm not sure, Brett, yours. And I asked Jen and Mike to take their picture off because I didn't want to be seeing their faces because it was too distracting. So basically, I'm just looking at this black screen and pretending that I'm talking to my friend. But because our piece is slightly theatrical and humorous, you can't just be. You have to drive it too, because it's just you alone. So I found technically it was very, very challenging to do that, to find that balance of being present and being human and being alive, but also keep driving it. And you're in a blank space. There's nothing coming back at you at all. I found that really a big challenge. Mike, I mean, that was strange, don't you think?
Yeah, totally bizarre. I think you handled it beautifully, but it did not feel like any kind of rehearsal process I've ever experienced.
No, and I felt like the next day, I wish that was rehearsal when we shot it and we could have done another day. I don't know about you guys, but I felt like, oh, I wish I could do that again, because now that I've done it, I know what the pitfalls are, and I wish I could film it again. You know, can we go back and film it again? Because as you know, there was really no rehearsal. I mean, when we rehearsed, I didn't have it memorized at that point, so that's a whole nother thing. But technically, I found it really challenging.
But we just wanted to make sure that we were replicating the theater process so that you all felt like you didn't have enough time. Just wanted to, you know, bring that feeling back. And Dana, you're also getting at something that is really interesting that I'd love to pull that thread, which is you've worked a lot in film and television as well. And I will say that as I set out thinking about these projects, you know, I think very strongly that theater is very much about audience and actors sharing space. It's a live event. It's presence. So as I thought about what does it mean for a theater to be producing, you know, we're not film and we're not television. We could never do it that well. So that part of what you're getting at is that kind of having to drive and having to be present even with the camera. Did it feel, I mean, can you talk more about how it felt different from film and television, or any of the rest of you, actors, directors, writers as well? Yeah.
I think we have to remember the greats. We have to remember Anna Devere Smith's Fires in the Mirror. We have to remember, geez, what's that play? Oh God. Matthew Shepard, sorry.
Oh, Laramie Project.
Laramie Project. We have to remember the past. And take what we know from the past and present it in our future present. And clearly it looks different and the film process is different. But as Reg says, it's about the story, right?
I mean, I've never worked in film, so this was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I mean, and the only reason I said yes was you asked me. Like, I'll do anything Susanna asked me to do, because I trust, and Josh is one of my closest collaborators, so I trusted him, and I trusted the words, and I trusted the story. And then Jakeem made it real. And it was terrifying because it was such a new process. It was so oddly lonely and just weird. And also, you don't get retakes as a director in theater. It's one of the things we all hate about directing theater is like, you actually don't control anything. And so it's really interesting to be able to say, well, what if we try it this way, this way, this way, and we could keep all the things as opposed to have to winnow it down and, you know, synthesize it down to the final product that will still change every night. So I found it terrifying in some ways, exhilarating in some ways, but I think Josh, right, the thing that threads through for me is the power of storytelling and the impact it can have. You know, that we tell stories for an audience. It just happens to be an audience at home now, sitting at laptops as opposed to sitting inside the theater. But what if the joy of that experience, the intimacy and connection of that experience, and the truth of the stories we tell could stay the same? So that I mean, it was a really novel pursuit to lean into this moment in that way.
Beautifully put. So I would love to open it up to questions from our audience. Speaking of our audience, I will say I'm watching some of these just to piggyback on Reg's thing. I had a moment where I thought, oh no, I've just given the film and television industry a whole bunch of really talented artists who now they can see their work and they're all gonna leave theater. So audience, if you have any questions that you would like to put in the chat, please do. This is your moment. We've got about 10 minutes. While I hope you're all typing, I'm gonna open up one question that's really too big for the time we have, which is, I was looking back at my notes and we went out to writers in the middle of May to ask for this project, thinking that the world was rapidly changing and thinking that we didn't know how it was changing, but we knew sort of what was happening. And then George Floyd was murdered and the world revealed itself anew. And I'm curious to hear if any of you sort of, as you were working through this process, how much you had to change direction, how much you were already sort of in that space. If anybody has any thoughts about that.
Well, I think George Floyd looked like one of my uncles, you know what I'm saying? So I saw myself getting killed on TV more than once, more different times, multiple occasions, different situations. So to see that repeat on the news a lot, first thing in the morning, you know, I kind of wanted to be in a healing space more than let's keep stabbing myself. I'm already getting killed on national TV and being, you know, put in my face every day. So to do the opposite is, for me, the courageous thing to do.
And I was extremely numb. I've been describing this moment as like the dual pandemics because I was watching what felt like the death of my industry, which is my life. You know, I get the joy of being a theater producer and director whose shows got canceled while we're actively closing the theater and reevaluating every piece of programming and budgeting every day. It felt like a new world of, you know, the industry changing. And then things really took a turn and I just felt numb. And so when you emailed me, we had already had like friend to friend chat of like, ugh. And then it was like this great balm to be able to work on a project where I could trust the collaborators, I could trust the story, and trust the producers would really create a space for however I was feeling. And so this project was really like rejuvenating for me. Out of a really dark kind of spring, I was able to figure out a new way to make art, a new way to tell stories I believed in. And use the pain to really find some new purpose. And I really appreciate Josh's words because they really did, I think, find a new insight into this moment for me as a reader, and I'm excited to see how audiences receive it.
I want to piggyback off of that and say that I am really grateful for this opportunity because I had been feeling very stuck. I had been feeling, you know, the industry was at a standstill, and, you know, we were all locked in our houses with this quarantine. And then also, you know, there's this incredible, what in only I can describe as a fire, you know what I mean, like happening around the world in terms of like the response to George Floyd's death. And I felt stuck, like I couldn't do anything. So this was an extremely healing and empowering and wonderful opportunity for a release of some sort, because I felt for so long that I'm like, I have all of this pent up, literally my body is seizing up and there's no way to release it.
Theater.
So, Hi, everyone on Zoom. I'm Rachel. I'm the Artistic Associate at Weston. I have a few questions from the chat. We have like 5 minutes. I'm just going to ask a few before we go. One question that was asked was, how did it feel to be performing for the theater actors without any audience feedback? Without any audience response?
Somebody else. I took Susan. You want? It's weird.
Question mark.
Because for our audience, keep in mind that when you're filming, even for film, you still have people in the room who they have to be quiet, but you still get there's still other bodies with you, right?
Another question was, do you see video theater as an ongoing, evolving art form, or are you just ready, excited to get back to live theater? What do you think, in other words, what do you think you'll take away from this new version of the form?
I think the new version of the form will evolve, and I think it will be even stronger. We're just the pioneers of it right now, but ultimately the theater will be back, and we will be back in the seats, and we will have our catharsis, damn it. So yeah, both.
And I think we could have both. I really think we can have the live engagement opportunity of going to see a show at 8 o'clock, but also keep finding ways to, lean into this digital platform. And it's really interesting, as someone who gratefully directs around the country, my family doesn't get to see much of my work. They see pictures, and so they now get the chance to get a deeper glimpse into this thing I do all day. So I think it's exciting to lean into both sides of this moment.
I also I feel like all the artists here have really had to reimagine our own skill set and have had to think about storytelling in a different way as well. So I don't know about the future of video theater, but I do think when we get back into the theater, you're going to see some artists who are hungry and who are also are so ready to go. It'll be so joyful when we're all back together again.
Another question, which we sort of talked about this, but we didn't get into too much detail. For all of you, how long did you work on this piece? That's also, I think, an interesting question for the playwrights. Part of when you're developing a new play, the revision process is so important. But I'm wondering, for something like this, how long it took you to craft your work, and then if being in the room, you changed it.
Obi Jack, go ahead.
Oh, Susanna, were you going to say something?
I was just going to sort of, again, we gave you very little time, but Vishak, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this one actually came out of me pretty quickly because I was missing my mom a lot. The theme of this was I miss my mom. And no, I mean, I came up with a draft, and Rachel and Susanna gave me notes, and Whitney White, who directed the piece, gave me a lot of notes. And then we slipped into the room with Susan, and Susan was just like memorized and ready to go and like incredible. And we didn't have to do many revisions, but so it was a pretty intuitive process. It went pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, same.
I'll just say we, with Jen, we had what was like sort of a normal development process of like reading and talking. But then once we actually did our first rehearsal with Dana, the space that Dana, the character, is in is such a character in the piece itself. So we actually had to Jen had to rewrite a whole section of the piece to shift to Dana's actual house and make sense of that, because we couldn't sort of imagine wherever we wanted to be. We had to actually work with Dana's real reality where she was filming, and that was sort of exciting.
Yeah, and we had to do things on the fly in the moment, because we had some technical things we had to deal with. So it was kind of like, okay, I got to remember all these words, but we have this technical thing, and it was kind of like, we have 2 hours to do this, but it was exciting and scary at the same time.
It's interesting. I think like all 3 of the Black men in the room named the same thing we were all coming to this piece with. So I think that spirit and that energy we're all in, coupled with, I think Josh and I having a relationship prior to this, and then you add on Josh's ability to, I think, write really honest portrayals of Black young men. It all just fit like a glove. I don't think you did any rewriting.
No, just the title.
You tried, different, takes on lines, but it fit Jakeem like a glove. And so I'm really very grateful for that. In hindsight, when I hear, these experiences, it's like, oh, it kind of poured out of Josh, and I think it poured right into Jakeem and I.
So I wish we could keep talking, but perhaps we will do another round of these at some point after everyone has watched. Reg, thank you. Jakeem, thank you. Josh, thank you. Mike, thank you. Dana, thank you. Vichette, thank you. And Susan, thank you. You're all wonderful. Audience, thank you all for being here. I'm sorry we can't be together in person, but while we can't, please enjoy these amazing pieces that we're bringing you tonight. And with that, let's all, I'll be really cheesy about this, cross through the virtual lobby and meet over on YouTube. Thank you, everyone.
Anna.